Hello, listeners. Welcome to Changepreneurs podcast, where we bring conversations that spark change. My name is Sathish Kumar, a life coach from South India and founder of Changepreneurs. Co-hosting this special episode with me is Priyanka Gaigoli, a passionpreneur joining us from Kudavale village, Dapoli Taluk, Maharashtra state. We are recording this episode on 17th June 2025, 7 a.m. IST. We are honored and privileged to have Vivek Sundaram. Vivek is an executive coach, mentor, and educator. He supports individuals, teams, and organizations in discovering clarity, aligning with purpose, and growing with consciousness. He has worked in most of the tech giants in US, starting with Microsoft, Google, LinkedIn, Refresh, Instagram, and Amazon. He is currently building Work Genie, an affordable on-demand executive coaching platform, making high-quality coaching accessible to everyone. Vivek has recently accomplished ACTC, Advanced Certification in Team Coaching. He has more than 600 hours of coaching experience. Vivek, welcome to Changepreneurs.
Thank you. That was a very, very warm and generous and kind introduction. I just wanted to, the same thing I told you earlier, which is while I am very, very happy and proud of having gotten the Kocharya certificate, a little bit of a journey yet in terms of getting the ICF ACTC credential. But we'll get there soon, I'm sure, no doubt.
Sure. Thank you, Vivek. Vivek, I'm a part of your WhatsApp group called Musings of the Holy Cow, Musings with MOO. He runs this WhatsApp group where he shares his reflections, wisdom, and learnings on a daily basis. I'm a big fan of Vivek. I came across last night, Vivek shared an interesting reflection. Let me read out to you guys. So, this is called the burnt toast theory. It says every time you burn your toast, miss your flight, get stuck in traffic, you're being delayed for a reason. It is the universe's way of redirecting you on a different path. What feels like a minor inconvenience is actually the universe at work, helping you to see that even if you don't get where you wanted to go, you will end up right where you're supposed to be. Trust the process. So, to start with, Vivek, I just want you to double click on this and get deep.
Thank you for referencing that. So I actually I've always wanted to believe this, and I think I've gotten, especially over the last 6 months, my belief in not even just the burnt toast theory, the burnt house theory. It's true of minor inconveniences, but it is also true of what we perceive as major calamities. It is that same thing. Like one of my teachers, what he said is the universe first whispers. If you don't hear, the universe pokes. And if you don't hear, the universe kicks or slaps only to get your attention and to take you to exactly where you need to be. So I have come to really, really, really believe in this notion of everything that happens to you happens for you, not to you. In fact, over there, I have, if you guys want, I can just step there for a second and bring it. There's this little pillow. There was this retreat I attended called Creative Gut, where he created a pillow for us which says, "My name Vivek. The universe has your back." This whole
Mhm.
benevolent universe thing, I have come to truly believe in. Everything, it's there is the aspect of finding the gift in every curse, but then there is actually the thing of saying that the we see it as a curse in our ignorance, and because our perception is very limited and incomplete, and if we were to see it fully, we would there is a gift in every gift. So it's almost, initially you say there is a gift in every curse, then you see, there's actually a curse in every gift, and then you see that there are no gifts or curses. There's just cause and effect. It's just the cosmic thingy playing itself out.
Well said. Beautiful.
So I guess that's such a profound thought, Vivek, and you've simply put it right. And I'm also curious now to understand what this WhatsApp group is. Maybe if I can be added to that, so that's such a great learning. And many a times, what happens is we keep focusing on our curses rather than looking at the bright side of it, right? I think with what you said just now, Vivek, it is going to make it quite easy and eventually it doesn't last as a gift or a curse, right? You look at things the way they are. So that's a great start, Vivek. I just want to now take you back, like maybe can you tell us more about yourself in your own words? How was your childhood? How did it all begin? My friend or my colleague Sathish did mention about your corporate achievements and other achievements, but we would like to know who Vivek is as a person.
Sure, happy to. So the story begins on the 4th of Jan 1980. So I was born in Mumbai, but I spent the first 10 years of my life in Tanzania in East Africa. And over there, the first 5 years we spent in Dar es Salaam, which is the city. But in the next 5 years, we spent in little towns and villages far away from the city, specifically Songia and Iringa. So in my early schooling, until second grade, I went to the school called the Indian Expatriate Study Group, which was a CBSE school in Dar es Salaam. But in third and fourth standard, we lived in this little village town called Iringa, which was 1,000 kilometers away from Dar es Salaam. We went to the same school, but we were what you call external students. So we were in a way homeschooled, but we would go back to school to give our unit tests and exams and all of those kinds of things. And I think after 2 years of it, mom decided that, dude, A, this isn't for me, and B, we need to get these guys some other company. So we came back to Bombay. But even before I come back, so those years, especially in Songia, I think was something I look back with great fondness. Like there used to be this guy called Bakari who used to help us around the house. He had a little hut which was in the same large complex, and his son, Abdul, and I, we really hit it off. So we would be co-conspirators in crime and all kinds of things. I vividly remember this time when we went off bicycling and it was raining. So since Songia is this little town and the roads are all made of mud, they all gummed up. So when we went cycling, our bicycle got stuck in the mud. And we were little kids, so we were not able to move it. So we just thought, hey, we'll chill. There's now mud and there's rain, so we'll just play. Adults, as you could imagine, were very worried. So my dad set out, and since it's a small town, he walked, he found us. And I very, very vividly remember the scene of him carrying the bicycle on his shoulder and us kind of walking along with him. Where I think the thing of it, I have noticed this now as I'm a parent, that there are so many of these things where we're like, oh my God, bacha ke saath kya ho raha hai? Barish mein, he's like lost in the rain. And those guys are having the time of their lives. Or nowadays, when my kids are actually coming to India, they're going to be here July 17th through August 8th. And my mom is like, oh, you shouldn't go to X, Y, or Z because it's raining. I'm like, no, maybe we should go there because it is raining. Like with modern society and in terms of this protectionist thing, there is this. And I think also it's important to realize happens for a reason. If you're, say, for example, in some cities, when you're out there and it's dirty and there's acid rain and there's overflowing gutters, it can actually be bad for you. But the thing is, that is not what rain is. If you go to Yanakad, this eco state near Kodai, which I'm very fond of, over there, you welcome the rain, you wash your clothes in the river and take a bath in the river and that kind of thing. I got off on a little bit of tangent, so let me bring it back. So 0 to 10 was in Tanzania. Most of my formative years were in Bombay, so 10 to 21 were in Bombay. Some interesting things I look back on during that time. So I started school at OLPS, where I went to school in 5th standard. Now, since I'd gone to a CBSE school over there, and I was joining a state board school over here, Hindi was actually easy. I think these guys were probably 2 or 3 grade levels below where I was coming from in terms of Hindi. So in order to compensate for that, the universe was like, I'll make it easy over there, but now you have to learn this new language, Marathi. So Marathi, I remember fifth standard, I did all right. I got like an 83. Sixth standard, 73. Seventh standard, 63. It was like this downward slope. And luckily, by eighth standard, Sanskrit came to the rescue. So one incident I remember, kind of as I've been reflecting on this, right, from school. In fifth standard, since I was this kid who had come from Tanzania or whatever, with a little bit of an accent who didn't know Marathi, I was like ripe picking, so to speak, right, for some boys who were looking for somebody to bully. So this particular guy called Girish is now a good friend. But what he would do is he used to allow to steal people's tiffin and water bottle and drink it during class. I used to sit somewhere in the middle. I wasn't a very, oh my God, listen to the teacher guy. I wasn't a throw chalks at teacher guy. I was just chilling and I was also new. So this guy would steal my water bottle and drink water, and this would make me mad. Okay, so I asked him, and he would say, ha ha ha, something like that. Now, I'm the kind of guy which is, if you mess with me, I have this vengeance streak in me. It's not so much about the revenge thing, it's about I want, like, for the dharma to prevail, or at least the rationalization I use. So I was like, what do I do? So what I did was one day I mixed soap water in my water bottle. So this guy takes my water bottle during class. He takes a swig and he gets permission from the teacher and goes out. And I'm like laughing inside. He comes back. He's so angry with me. And then afterwards, he throws my water bottle on the ground and breaks it. But then water bottle be gone. This was like it was And after that, he never messed with me again. So this is another story which comes to mind. And then 21 onwards, I've been in the US. So I did my master's in computer science at UIUC, started as a software engineer. So I actually interned at Microsoft before I went back to join as a full-time software engineer. It was very clear to me that the way my brain is wired, I'm the kind of guy, I don't know if you guys have heard of this theory of foxes and hedgehogs. Have you?
No.
I'll tell you all very briefly. So foxes like to do a little bit of a lot of things. Think of it as a jack of all trades. Hedgehogs like to go really, really deep in one thing. Now, I'm a self-confessed fox. So if you give me a problem in terms of, hey, let's build an app like Riverside, in terms of, hey, UX, UI, let's get an MVP going, that kind of stuff I love. Creativity creates something. But now the real software engineering is, how do you make it work not in 99% of the cases, but in 99.99999% of the cases? Not just how do you make it work in one or two browsers once in a while, but how do you tackle all those edge cases and all those things? That is where real engineering lies. For example, if you're building a bridge, and that does not at all appeal to me. I discovered this even during my internship, and I decided that software engineering is interesting, but that, which is a very important aspect of being which I would want in a good software engineer if I was using the product, was not something that came naturally to me. But I decided I'll do it for 2 years anyway before moving into the product world. So I did do that. 2 years I switched into the product world, and then I did product management for 15 years. So now, even in product management, from software engineer, I started on Microsoft Office. I was a PM on the Office team. Then I quickly got bored. I was like, these ship cycles takes 2.5 years. I need something which ships in weeks. So I moved to Google. I worked at Google for 5 years, and I was working on the ads team. That was a lot of fun. Again, this boredom set in terms of, hey, this is cool, but I want to work on something that I would use. Now, ads was hugely impactful in terms of what made it fun was it was like a game where I remember this one engineering director would say that whenever I think about allocating my engineers, my internal compass is I only want to put them on projects which will make at least $20 million a year. If there's no evidence that it will, or we can't get that evidence in a short time, I would rather put them on something else. I'm offering that to you guys simply to show that ads was that kind of a space in Google at that time, which is you go and there's all this gold to be mined. But then quickly got bored. I wanted to work on something I would use. This took me to LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, I got an opportunity to work on the homepage and the newsfeed. Yeah, I want to pause for a second. I'm just taking this whatever's coming up. If you guys want me to be briefer or bring it back, I'm leaving it to you guys to rein me in.
We are game for it, Vivek. So far, so good. Yeah.
Okay. So that was LinkedIn. Again, very fun experience. But then after that, I was like, while it was beautiful, the other streaks in myself I discovered during my LinkedIn time was the streak of independence and autonomy, which is I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it, if I want to do it, how I want to do it, by when I want to do it. And when you're working for someone else, however progressive the environment can be, there's only so much of that you can get. From LinkedIn, I joined a small startup called Refresh. At Refresh, I was the sixth employee and the first product manager. This, on one hand, gave me a lot of, there was nobody to report to outside of the CEO. So I was also the head of product. But now, along with being the head of product, also comes being the tail of product. There was nobody else to give things to. So I was also doing design and customer service and data science and marketing and everything else. This was actually a very, very fun experience, and that there were all these things where in LinkedIn, somebody else would do for you, where now you were the someone else. So I learned a lot. After a couple of years, LinkedIn ended up acquiring Refresh. I took a small break. Again, following the stream of looking for new, shiny, unexplored objects, I ended up joining Facebook. So when I joined Facebook at the time, they had this way of operating where they would bring you in after interviewing you, and then they would say, come, do this boot camp, talk to people and find some mutual fit. I'd never worked with this concept before, you have a job at Facebook, but now you need to find a team. And of course, you need to like the team, but the team also needs to like you. So during this time, two of my favorite people, George and George, I met during boot camp. So George was my mentor. I was like, dude, how does this work? He said, see, I'll share you a trick which has worked. This trick which he shared with me, I've shared with many, many people, and it's superb. What he said is, see, is there anybody you know at Facebook? I'm like, yes, I know Vishu, I know X and Y. He's like, great. What I would encourage you to do is go and have a conversation with them, introduce yourself, tell them where you are, about yourself, what you know about yourself, what you're looking for. Get curious about them and this thing and their challenges. This way, it's just a fun way to learn. And at the end of every conversation, ask them, now that you know all this about me, who are three other people who you think I must definitely talk to? And they will give you names. And what he said, and the way this plays out, is this does two things. After you speak to one person, you have three leads. After you speak to those three people, you have 9 leads, on and on. Second advantage, suppose Sathish is one of the leads. Okay. Now Sathish is very busy. He's like some PM director who barely has time and doesn't want to be bothered with all these new Facebookites. Now, if I go to Sathish and say, hey Sathish, I'd spoken to Priyanka. She spoke very highly of you and said, I probably should have a conversation with you based on my interest. I looked a little bit at your work and these are things I discovered. If and when convenient, I would love to get a little bit of your time. This brings in social proof because now Satish is not getting a request from a random dude. He is getting his friend Priyanka has referred this guy to her. Chances of conversion much higher. Now, even more important is this. What George said and the way it plays out is it will not be 1, 3, 9, 27, 81 alone, because you will observe after you go a level or two down that there are some people who 6 to 8 people are telling you to go meet. These are the people you should actually go meet, and in a way you have sussed out who are like the most well networked, well respected, and looked up to people in the organization. So anyway, this is one thing I learned during my time in boot camp at Facebook. I ended up joining, being interested in Instagram. The small hiccup was this guy, his boss George, who was heading the Instagram growth team. I was not an Instagram user and I had never done growth. So now I need to make a case for why they should consider bringing me on for this. And it was not like they were a big team and they could support me. The only 2 people on the Instagram team was George, who was the director of growth, and little George, who was my mentor. So the pitch I made to them was, see, I'm not an Instagram user. Now you guys have reached a point where you need people like me on board. So of course I installed Instagram. Who better to help you get to people like me than me? And of course, I had built this relationship with George, who was my mentor. One thing led to the other, so I ended up getting that role. Now, that role itself, another really, really fun learning experience, because Instagram at that time was a very small growth team. There were just three of us on the PM team, head of growth, and these two PMs, and a handful of engineers. But across the road, we had what was arguably one of the best consumer growth teams on the planet. So it was almost like going to growth school. Those guys had 35 PMs. They had growth marketers, designers, a whole slew of things. So we'd go there, talk to them. They'll be like, hum log ne ye kiya, all of these things. We'll be like, great. It's almost like coming back and do our little project at home. And because of where Instagram was at the time, there was a lot of low hanging fruit. So we went from a small hundreds of millions to skyrocketing growth, almost learning from them and putting these experiments. And the most fulfilling part was when we would discover something new and go back to tell them, and by the way, aisa bhi hota hai, aap log bhi try karke dekh lo. So this was Facebook and Instagram and growth. Then after that, I went to Amazon where I was working on this. So this is a very interesting fact. So the idea they were working on at the time, and this is hush hush, so they couldn't tell me about it. The way they would introduce interviewees to their product was almost a coaching-like approach by asking them questions. They were like, what do you think is one of the problems with Amazon? Through a series of inquiry, they will get you to the point of, oh, there's poach theft. They would say, how might you resolve poach theft? The answer that they had come up with this concept of in-house delivery. So creating a series of procedures, technology, and other things to allow you to, when you make an order, have the delivery assistant gently open your door, slip the package in, close the door, and lock it, all in a way that you're able to monitor, control, and fully within your control. And then what happened right after we launched, COVID hit. So then everybody was home. Then this whole in-home anything became I am already home. So that team pivoted and went another direction. That's another story. Now coming back to December 2019, is around when I left Amazon. I was taking what I was expecting would be a short break. I thought it would be like 3 to 6 months. And then COVID hit and the kids were home. I was like, okay, great, I'll spend some time at home. And then I got so used to the break that this break went on for 2 years. Coming out in Jan-Feb 2022, when I was like, abhi kya karna hai? So one thing I have not touched on in my description so far to you guys is I used to really enjoy teaching. So even as a product manager, I started teaching product management in around 2010. I would both helping new and aspiring product managers break into the field and helping existing product managers grow in the field was something that really appealed to me. So I had this idea, which I was calling Work Genie, and the incarnation at that time was something like this. So when I was at, say, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they used to offer a lot of these workshops, things like radical candor, six thinking hats, situational leaderships, crucial conversations, and I was a sucker for these things. I would just love doing them. Now I noticed a few things. First, people who would most benefit from those were usually not going to those. There were many people who were actually very successful who were doing work and like, dude, I can do 2 days of work or I can go have a conversation for 2 days. I would rather do the work. And then there were people like me who, if I'm being honest, almost did this for a sport. Enjoyed it so much that you get into this workshop mode. You come back, there is the halo effect, maybe plays out a little bit, and then you go right back to your old ways. So the idea of Work Genie at the time in my mind was something like this. I was like, invert the process. Suppose, let's say Priyanka. So we meet her where she is and we find out from her what's alive for her in terms of what are her greatest fears and aspirations. Maybe it's in terms of the way she's relating to her work or her boss or her report or her peer or her dog or whatever she knows best. Once she has shared that story, through a process of short conversations, we invite her to reflect on something and maybe share a story and ask her if it evokes anything in her and get her to say, I could try this. And through the key here being short, 10, 15 minutes, but tightly spaced conversations, get her to run experiments in her own life and report back on kya ho raha tha, what worked, what did not. So if it was a topic like radical candor, it would be delivered in a bite-sized story, she would apply it and she would come back with, this worked. Which means the idea would be in a short span of maybe even less than a week. This wouldn't be an abstract model which was delivered in a TED talk, which she was talking about. This would be a lived experience which would be cemented in her brain and something she would own. This is my idea. Like, ठीक है idea, but बकरा चाहिए. My product management background came in handy. Luckily, I had students who kind of tolerated me. I had some friends. So I just recruited some people and started pawning this on them, and it mostly worked. So I said, ठीक है, इसमें कुछ है. What next? Two conversations I remember. One was this guy, Steve Cadigan, who used to be the CHRO at LinkedIn when I was there. And another was with this guy, Mike Welch, who used to head up learning and development at Facebook when I was at Instagram. So I told them, hey guys, I've been doing this thing. तो वो लोग ने बोला executive coaching के बारे में सुना है क्या? I was like, हाँ सुना, but so they were like, that is when, so in the July of 2022, I started my ICF coaching journey. And the way Work Genie warped into this now was the following. Coaching is amazing. Many others have shown before me that it's great for the client. They're able to grow in consciousness, realize their potential. It's great for the coach. They feel rewarded. They actually learn during these conversations, and it's good for the universe. But three things which could be reframed. One, it is very, very expensive, which is, for example, a good master level coach can cost anywhere from say $100 to $200 to $10,000 to $20,000, depending on ability to pay, value realized, blah, blah, blah. Second, it's actually pretty intensive. You're like, hey, do you want to enter into a 6-session journey over 2 years and blah, blah. And people are like, dude, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And third, as a result of these two, it is not very accessible. I was like, what if we could attack these three and turn them on their head? So I was like, what if we made it free? What if we made it fast? And what if we made it fun? So the idea was like coaching. When you go to someone and you ask them, hey, do you want to try coaching? It's not a, hey, this hard work, you'll get out of it what you put into it. It's a 6-month journey. It's more like, chal, baat karna hai kya? So this was the idea with Work Genie. Then, in parallel, I started my ICF coaching journey, did my L1 July to November 22, L2 December 22 to March 23, vagera, vagera. Now, the thing we were talking about earlier, this other streak in me, which is when I feel called to do something, I need to know this thing in order to do it. When I don't feel called to do something, I just don't do it. Like what I was describing to another friend, right? Actually, I'll come to this thread in a little bit. Let me draw back to where I was with this. So what I was telling you guys, now, Work Genie, as I went through this thing, I actually distinctly remembered 2 conversations. One was with Rashmi. This was in the Jan of 2023 when I was in my PCC journey, PCC training journey. So I was like, she was like, I set up small milestones. I said, I'm going to close 10 clients and then we'll go from there. Then it comes to pricing, right? I have to price this because 2 things I've realized that people only value something when they pay for it. So some energy exchange serves. How should I price it? So Tabi, I was like, I could price it based on the market. That would defeat the purpose because I'm trying to do something else. Or I could look at Amazon's approach, which is what is the lowest possible price, which has some chance of working. So I came up with this arbitrary number of $100 a month for unlimited coaching, all you can eat. Because the idea was I wanted coaching to be a utility. Like, you know how हम लोग जब पानी यूज करना है तो सोचते नहीं है कि हाथ धोने के लिए यूज करूं, स्नान करने के लिए यूज करूं, खाना बनाने के लिए यूज करूं. You just use it. You pay for it. You still treat it with respect. So I was like, if we could create a world where coaching was like that, you just use how much ever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, was the idea. So the coaching with Rashmi was like, hey, let's get 10 clients in the next 30 days. And I hit that milestone in 3 days, mainly because I just asked my friends and they were like, sure. Then I remember a few months down the line, I had a coaching conversation with Pungi. He was like, ठीक है, अब क्या? I was like, अभी 10 हो गया, अभी 100,000, 10,000, 10 million, sky's the limit. तभी ऐसा सोच रहा था. He was like, हाँ, फर्क क्या पड़ता है? As I was thinking about it, I realized कि actually कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता. I'm not doing it for anyone else, and all this impact though, it might be the primary motivation for some people. To me, it is just a happy side effect. In that I wasn't trying to serve 1, 10, 100 or 10 million people. I was doing all of this for one person. This is also the time when my coaching journey kickstarted my spiritual journey. So I was reading a little bit about Vedant, X, Y, Z, all of those things. So then this whole thing was, I almost like turned inward. And I think I went through this period where I was, ठीक है, वो नहीं करना, I don't care about 10,000 people. Then what is it that I actually do care about, and what does this mean? So I'll share with you guys later if you're interested. I recently wrote a deep reflection for this creative and personal mastery course, where one thing I came to realize about myself is goals motivate a lot of people. Like, for example, going into the CPM course, right? Many people were like, I want to be a great entrepreneur or a coach or a leader or whatever. This is my goal. And what they said is, I don't have a problem with goals. These are their words. They hit their goals, but it comes at cost, say health cost, relationship cost, XYZ cost. Yes, Sunki, I was like, I know many people like this who are highly accomplished. They hit every goal, but it comes at a cost, and they're like, was it worth it? मुझे उल्टा प्रॉब्लम होता है, because when I'm inspired, I don't need the goal. And अगर मुझे करने का मन नहीं कर रहा है, तो I don't care about the goal. So I was like, is CPM even the right program for me? Because like my only goal is to just not have a goal and do whatever amuses me in this moment. So I had a conversation with Ujjwal ji, with Dr. Rao, etc. And what they said is, see, the reason we worded it this way is because the people who are initially drawn to this are those guys, but it is very much also meant for this. And what I've come to realize is, I'll actually share this story with you guys, another very powerful story. So my Vedanta teacher, Partho Dada, he says, I think it was one of the disciples of Ramakrishna Paramahansa. During the end of his days, he was walking somewhere, Haridwar, Varanasi, and then he just fell and collapsed. And he was like, oh Lord, it's been an amazing life, blah, 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 full of gratitude. It was cold. Then some kind passerby came and put a chadar on him, and he was like, oh Lord, such great warmth, so this thing, you're taking care of me, full of gratitude. Then 30 minutes later, some other guy came by and said, hey, old monk, good chadar, stole the chadar and ran away. And he was like, oh Lord, you're reminding me again about this ephemeral nature, full of gratitude. So the lesson there was, if you have gotten to the level of discipline and control of the physical, the vital, and the mental, that you can relate to it like that, then you're ready for that goalless life. Otherwise, it's just escapism and you are just going goal. So then my journey over the last 6 months came down to, what does that mean for me in terms of discipline over the physical, the vital, and the mental? Because I am really drawn towards this idea of living in the moment. One other story, and it's so interesting that these things are coming up, and I'm going to treasure this recording as a collection of all the stories which have really been valuable for me. Again, my Vedanta teacher, Partho Dada, right? So he, by the way, is like a very, very established Vedantic scholar in that he's written books on this is Sanatana Dharma, integral yoga, vagera. But in his teaching with us, he doesn't even touch on it. He encourages us to focus on self-observation in terms of what is arising in thought, emotion, and sensation, what insights and questions are arising, and then bring up those experiential questions. So here's a story he shared. He's like, imagine एक bowl में muddy पानी है, okay? तुम उसे टेबल पे छोड़ते हो and you go off for a walk. And then you come back. What has happened to the ripples and the sediment? And everybody is like, it's settled. He's like, हाँ. Now imagine वो ripples ऐसे हो रहे हैं. Instead you're like, ripples ऐसे हो रहे हैं. मैं उल्टा करके देखता हूँ. Ripples ऐसे हो रहे हैं. मैं ऐसा घुमा के देखता हूँ. And he gestures. He's a performer. Okay, so when he's doing this, I'm like, अरे settle क्यों नहीं हो रहा है? क्यों नहीं हो रहा है? होगा क्या? And all of us saying, नहीं होगा. He's like, this is exactly what we're doing all the time. Like when this mind is full of thought and emotion and all this churn, the solution is simply to be quiet and pay attention. And yet we want to attend Vedanta retreats and meditation retreats and yoga retreats and XYZ and और क्या करना? एक उंगली नहीं, दूसरा उंगली, तीसरा उंगली, and we're doing this and wondering why isn't it settling? So this way he was saying the solution is to be quiet and pay attention. And even that, the second part is superfluous. It is simply to be quiet because attentiveness is the natural state. Then another thing which he said really stuck with me. This thing about discipline. I always used to think I need to build discipline. When I set a goal, if it stops amusing me, karta nahi hu, I am not disciplined. So what he said was, "Ye discipline jo cheez hai na." Here's the way to relate to it. Take a baby. When a baby comes into this world and it's crawling, it takes tremendous discipline of the physical for it to train its muscles to walk. Now imagine two babies. One baby is milestone. By this quarter, isna chalna chahiye, and by 1 year, I should be able to walk. And he's constantly looking at other babies and thinking, how am I doing? Or imagine how babies show up today. Which baby is more likely to walk? And everybody's like, of course, the latter. He's like, discipline is staying true to your truest, deepest inner drive. Ye dunya mein, what passes for discipline, when a mom tells the kid, you are not disciplined, what she's really saying is, mujhe jo chahiye, tum nahi kar rahe ho. You are not staying true to what is true for me. That is not discipline. Find out what is true for you, and to thine own self be true. So over these last 6 months, my journey has been really to try to cultivate quietude and attentiveness with the aspiration of reaching that equanimity. My Gita teacher, another guy, his name is Dr. Parikshit. So, okay, another story. So, there is this verse in the Bhagavad Gita. I don't know a lot of verses, okay, but a couple of verses which I know I really connect with. So, this one goes like, this is not Sukhadukke wala, this is the other one. It goes, Ashochan anvashochashtvam pragyavadanscha bhashase gatasuna gatasuncha nan shochanti panditaha. What it means is, Ashochan anvashochashtvam, you grieve for those who should not be grieved for, pragyavadanscha bhashase, while speaking words of wisdom, gatasuna gatasuncha, for the living and for the dead, nan shochanti panditaha, the wise men do not grieve. So now this is a beautiful phrase in short, but what really stuck with me was, this was my very first session that I was attending of his on 3.11, or maybe it's 2.11. And then what happened that day was, in the WhatsApp group, another student had posted saying, hey, I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend today's session. Somebody close in the family passed away. I wasn't able to make it. His response to that was, may Lord Krishna give you strength to bear with this. Om. That's it. So what struck me was, there was no indication that, arre, kya hua, bechari, that. So, and what I've noticed about the greatest teachers, they don't talk the lessons, they live it. Even while they are teaching you, like another teacher, so Priya Ramesh, in our ACTC, she and her husband Ramesh Sridhan were delivering the session on psychological safety. So while they had this beautiful framework, what really struck me was, in that very session, while they were team coaching us, all the things that they were talking about is what they were actually doing, and you could see it in action. And that kind of teachers who first teach from their lived experience and actually teach you by doing it in front of you and allowing you to observe and saying, what you're saying, idhar ho raha hai. It's almost that physics lesson where when I say V equals U plus AT, you drop a ball, measure the velocity for yourself, put it into a table and say, it falls into this. That kind of experiential learning. I got a little distracted. Kahan tha main? Oh yeah. So this was Partho Dada and Dr. Parikshit. So I think where I am right now, right? Sandeep, another one of my teachers, Sandeep Kapila, he and his wife Garima, she's also amazing. I recently finished this workshop called Vichar. So I did this workshop on meditation with him. His definition, which I've come to adopt now, it's my definition, is meditation is simply being present to the truth of this moment with compassion and non-attachment. Which, as I thought about it, is exactly the definition of coaching. You're fully present to the client's truth the great compassion, unconditional positive regard. You believe in them, you believe in their situation, you believe in their universe, but with complete non attachment, because you realize the only thing in your control is to create the conditions under which growth can happen. And whether or not it actually happens is not at all in your control. I think the biggest learning for me in these 6 months has been in that non attachment, because my nature, when somebody comes to me with a problem, I get very involved. I'm like, this is a beautiful problem. Isko jaake solve karte hain, kya karna, kaise karna. And there are places where that is helpful, but there are places where attachment to the outcome actively gets in the way. So if I was to tie a ribbon in all of this and think about what are my practices or aspirations going forward, I think it's about cultivating compassion, which is, I think, that unconditional positive regard, first for myself, for the other, for the universe, trusting that things will happen. This comes naturally to me. While it's going to be the work of a lifetime, I think kahin to hu. The thing I need to work on is presence. And I think, okay, another thing on presence. So what the world thinks of as presence is what you call executive presence. You walk into a room and sab log ut ke dekhte hain, bah, bah, bah. That is one kind of presence. But the presence in coaching is almost the exact opposite. It is spacious presence. It is the kind of person jo kuch bolta nahi hai, who's always available. And those people who don't feel like opening up will go find those people and open up to them. That spacious presence. And being able to be present even when I'm bored, uninterested, XYZ, ABC is something I definitely need to work on. And a place where I think I've made a lot of strides in the last 6 months is this non-attachment, which is set intents, not commitments. Do your very best work and leave the rest to the universe. So I think I'll pause there for a little bit, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this expression. I really enjoyed it.
We enjoyed listening as well, Vivek. Thank you so much. I have a couple of observations or reflections here. You shared your journey of your corporate working for tech giants in US, and then you decided to take a break for about 6 months, which got extended to a couple of years, and then you got into coaching, and now you also mentioned the fact that you have started your spiritual journey. I'm curious to find out, Vivek, when you work for the tech giants, right, when you were having a successful corporate career, what was your definition of success then, and how has it changed now?
Beautiful question. So I think this is actually a great question. I will share with you guys this CPM reflection. It's not that long. It's only like a less than 1,500 word essay, but it actually hasn't changed so much. I have always been somebody who wants to live in the moment. Who so so one thing I've always wondered, na, ki I need to build discipline. Why am I not like sticking to goals? Like when I set my mind on something, etc., etc. And then I realized, or why do I procrastinate, right? And I realized the question to ask is, in fact, this insight came out of this workshop from a couple of days ago. Is not, Vivek, why do you procrastinate? But ask, why do the others not procrastinate? And then if we think about it, outside of what we're doing from our true inner calling, which of course you want to expand to a lot of things that we humans do come from fear and greed. If I don't do this, then boss will do XY, this karna padega. If I don't do this, promotion ruk jayega, karna padega. If I don't pack in time, flight chut jayega, karna padega. And what I've realized is, for me, for better or worse, or in reality for neither better nor worse, I'm very, very under-calibrated on that fear index. So this actually works very well for me, but the insight for me is this is the challenge. So to take a metaphor, suppose मेरा घर है, and through great sadhana I have conquered hunger. हफ्ते में एक बार खाता हूँ. जब कोई घर पे आता है, I have conquered hunger. वो लोग बोलते हैं breakfast किधर है, lunch किधर है. I'm like, भाई मतलब हफ्ते एक बार खाते हैं ना, chill मार. If I was the host, they would be resentful and annoyed. First, they'll be hungry. Second, they'll be irritated that I am not hungry. And so this is like twice the irritation. And as I double clicked on, I used to talk a lot about how I don't find myself getting triggered a lot. I find myself triggering others a lot. I realized that this is the reason. And when you think about this definition of success in terms of meeting deadlines, XYZ, ABC, right? Whether it's even my teachers, even the teachers I respect the most, if they tell me kuch karna hai, if I buy it, मैं करूंगा. Otherwise it'll be क्यों करना, कब तक करना, किसको करना, कैसे करना. And unless I'm bought in, I'll more find it physically incapable to go do it. So this particular definition of success for me has always been feeling at peace and fulfilled, and maybe sometimes a little hedonistic success in terms of meetha kao so jao. So that thread has not changed that much. I think society has been trying to, this is another thing. So what Partho Dada says, right? The thing I've always wanted to believe, like there is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. One thing he said stuck with me: the entirety of morality as we know it is a social construct. It's been constructed by society for its preservation and expansion. Because in the absence of morality, society as we know it would collapse. But society optimizes for society, not for the individual. Simple toy example which makes this relatable. If this guy is like, let's say, what society considers a criminal. If society had infinite resources, like if that was society's son, it would treat him with compassion, pyar se, achhe se, blah, 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 and actually try to make him grow. But society does not have infinite resources, or actually more accurately, society is under the assumption that resources are limited. So it's like, should I spend this money on that kid's education or on this criminal's redemption? Throw him into prison. So in this way, society optimizes for it believes to be in its best interest. It's doing what it can, but this is not in that criminal's interest. And in some sense, all of us are criminals in some kind of way, that society is not looking out for the individual, but for the collective. That is where this whole thing about the only moral compass you need to hold on to is your own, which is as long as you're being true to yourself, there is no good or bad. The challenge arises because the only law over here is the law of karma. There is no causeless effect and there's no effectless cause. So there's actually nothing wrong in slapping someone. The challenge arises if you slap someone, there will be a consequence. They may slap you back, they may hate you, and society will ostracize you, or you'd get thrown into prison. If you're consciously willing to live with all those circumstances, like if you were a freedom fighter or an X, Y, or Z, there's nothing wrong with it. चैलेंज ये होता है कि लोगों को कॉज करना और फिर लोगों को इफेक्ट लेना नहीं है, उसमें प्रॉब्लम है. सो एनीथिंग डन विद फुल कॉन्शियसनेस is okay. I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but that's what was coming up when you were asking your question.
That's very interesting, Vivek. You talked about success back then, and the definition of success for you now. I think it is being true to yourself, it is being kind to yourself, and being happy within be it your corporate world or while what you're doing coaching right now. You're creating, how do I put it? Like success is for millions, right? You're connecting with people. I think I remember when you had a very long conversation about, your journey. You mentioned that connection is very critical, right? Connecting with people is so, so, so important. You also keep saying about universe, and universe works magically. Now, my question to you is, do you believe everyone has a calling, right, from within? And what if someone is not able to find it? So what is the advice that you would like to give to someone who is in that zone right now, figuring out?
Beautiful question. So I have come to believe that yes, each of us has a very, very unique calling. And it is not about creating that calling, it is about discovering that calling. The calling is already there. Okay, so that is the answer to your first question. And in terms of somebody who's struggling or whatever, right? I think the first step is to boss. It's almost like Maslowian hierarchy. Suppose I, for example, knew this person, I would say, घर पे बैठ जा, कुछ मत कर, एक हफ्ता खाना पीना ऐश, Netflix में Korean drama देख और see Tales of Hanuman, something spiritual. Center. Now that you're centered, reflect from three angles. The first angle to start with is, what is it that brings you alive? Okay. And in fact, this creative gut thing I was at, he's come up with this beautiful set of 13 to 15 questions, which I think I'd shared in that Moosing Streak too, around how do you identify what is it that brings you alive? Once you have that, move on to what is it that I'm good at? Not because I think so, but log kehte hain. People are like, hey, tu ye mast karta hai. Again, there's this beautiful set of questions on how do I find out where my strengths lie. Only after you have done these two, reflect on how have you contributed to the world already and how would you like to contribute to the world. And at the intersection of these three lies your purpose. The sequence of this step is very important because often people start with what contribution should I make to the world? And maybe this will work, but in my reason, the reason the former works better is take Picasso, right? There's this quote attributed to Picasso, which goes something like, the purpose of life, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. So before you give it away, you need to find your gift, because otherwise there's nothing to give away. If Picasso had started with, अरे यार दुनिया में बहुत हंगर है, एजुकेशन है, मैं सोशल वर्कर बन जाता हूँ, एजुकेट करता हूँ, he would have been a very unhappy teacher. I mean, potentially, hypothetical. Instead, he was like, what brings me alive? My gift is creating these beautiful pieces of art. And then he's like giving it away, and he left this beautiful legacy. If each one of us was to see this similarly in terms of what is it that brings me alive, what is my gift, and then give it away. The second thing I think people get stuck with, which again in this creative gut workshop he illustrates beautifully, is लोगों को लगता है कि पर्पस का मतलब तीर मारना, दुनिया बदलना, इलॉन मस्क जैसा मार्स लेके जाना या पेरिस टावर वगैरह वगैरह, ऐसा है ही नहीं. He gave us examples of this one guy, uneducated by society's interpretation of education, who lives in Rajasthan, where his purpose was, there was a particular bird which had migrated to an area in Marwar. He cared for that bird and helped rebuild that population from 2 when he started it to 20,000 right now. The purpose for a grandmom might be seeing her grandchildren, telling them stories and creating a nurturing environment where they can grow. So this purpose is very, very expansive, and I think society's definition of purpose is a little warped. Like, we were having this great discussion at this Vichar workshop where somebody said that whole quote we all know, which is Jack of all trades and the master of none. Apparently that quote is incomplete. The actual quote goes like, Jack of all trades and a master of none is often better than a master of one. So the initial thing where this did not know this, right? I was like, what? So the place it actually came up was knowing a little bit about a lot of other things allows you to draw these dots. So this is thing one. And then somebody was like, नहीं आजकल T-shape बोलते हैं कि jack of all trades and the master of one. And then somebody was like, नहीं, the latest is comb shaped, jack of all trades and master of many ones. And then the realization that hit me is society, again, not blaming society. Its goal is to preserve and propagate. So it wants to milk the most out of the individual. So it wants to trick the individual into नहीं पहले सबका थोड़ा थोड़ा कर, हाँ अब इसका ज्यादा कर. It's almost like किसी को घर पे बुला लिया, chill मार, थोड़ा थोड़ा काम कर ले, अरे तू प्लम्बिंग बढ़िया करता है, तू घर का प्लम्बर आज से, वो तो ये भी बढ़िया करता है, तू घर का प्लम्बर भी, तू घर का गार्डनर भी. There is some good in this. You're building capacity in that person. If it comes from that person's desire to grow in all those dimensions, amazing. If it comes from a societal prescription on ये भी करना चाहिए, ये भी करना चाहिए, ये भी करना चाहिए, ये भी करना चाहिए, it can be very, very deforming for the individual. It's just like sacrifice, right? Which is, जब मैं goat को लेता हूँ and say, hi, I am going to sacrifice the goat. How am I sacrificing anything? I picked up a goat and I've decided that the goat is going to be sacrificed. Compare this with a soldier who's like, I care for my country, I'm going to walk into certain death, but I don't care because that purpose is what holds this thing to me. This is the difference between sacrifice which is imposed on the goat who is not really hot on being sacrificed versus sacrificing coming from the inside. So I think to tie this back into a sharp answer to your question, I think the first thing is to settle down and return to center and examine all these mental models. Like Dr. Rao, the way I also see this, right? There's this short scripture called the Bhajagovindam, where it essentially says that our world is viewed through a whole bunch of mental models living in our head. The only thing you need to do is take each of them and pressure test them. And you'll see with a certain number of knocks, they'll all collapse one by one. Once all the 40 mental models have collapsed, you're left with spiritual enlightenment.
Just to give context to listeners here, when you mention Dr. Rao, Dr. Sri Kumar Rao, right?
And I highly recommend, he's got an infinity of free content available on YouTube, XYZ, where he talks. He's like Partho Dada, very engaging to listen to. So you can listen to him as you go off to sleep. You can listen to him when you go on a hike and it slowly simmers and settles down. So, yeah.
Fantastic. So much to learn from you, Vivek. But what I want you to touch upon, what I'm curious to learn from you is, in this world, there is infinite sources of consumption, right? You go to Facebook, Instagram, you read blog posts, you read books, and you listen to podcasts, YouTube, everywhere. There is a lot of information available. But I want to find out from you, how much time do you as a person spend on consuming, and how much time do you as a person spend on reflecting? Because I see that, reflecting is the process that is required for everyone, which normally doesn't happen.
This is such a phenomenal question. So I'll tell you something. So again, a couple of stories. So Ujjwal ji, right, when we were starting our coaching journey, उन्होंने एक चीज बोला था. He was like, as you go on your coaching journey, बहुत books आएंगे, podcasts आएंगे, tweets आएंगे, courses आएंगे, सब आएंगे. सब ले लो. I'm not saying don't, but एक चीज याद रखना. You'll get way more value by taking the one thing you already learned, reflecting on it, and thinking about what will you change in how you are being today, tomorrow, and the day after, than doing 30 other things. And I must confess that there is knowing this, there is saying this, and there is living this. And while I know it and I can say it and I can observe it, I still have a way to go in terms of living it. The second thing is, just around the time he was saying it, I was volunteering at my kid's school. He was at that time 7 years old. I think kindergarten, first, second grade कहीं था. स्कूल गया था तो एक बोर्ड था, उस पे ट्रायंगल. It was learn, try, reflect. And the instruction for those kindergartners was, ये learning की जो process है, पढ़ लो, कुछ concept देख लो, उसके बाद वो करके देखो क्या होता है, and then spend time to reflect on जो हुआ, क्यों हुआ, जो मैंने सोचा था होगा, क्यों नहीं हुआ, और क्या हो सकता है, और क्या सीखना है, and then go back to learning, which is the importance of spending time at each of these three. And I think I, for one, am certainly guilty on, like I was telling you earlier, going on those learning sprees in terms of ye bhi chahiye, wo bhi chahiye, ye bhi chahiye, wo bhi chahiye. Then you get into that place that ashochan anvashocascha pragyavadascha bhashase, which is, there is another class of teachers also who are extremely learned. They can quote every Veda phrase in this thing and rhyme in this thing, and they can talk about it. They're also helpful. You listen to them, but then you see it that they sometimes are not living what they're saying. And I'm certain that I am guilty of exactly this in many, many areas. We as humans are such that Kabir ji ka this thing, na, बाकी लोगों का small dot shows like a huge thing. हम लोग का huge dot collapses into nothing. But how does that doha go? बुरा जो देखन में चला, बुरा मिला न कोई, and then when I look inwards, मुझसे बुरा न कोई. He's another one of my huge inspirations.
Priyanka, you have something to ask?
Oh, sorry, it was my turn, my bad.
Yeah.
Wow. Uh, there is so much to learn, reflect upon, and actually also to, digest in because I've learned so much throughout this conversation, Vivek, I must say that. And I'm making notes as well to reflect upon after this conversation. I just have a one question now for you is any habit, like, we saw that you shifting careers or, moving from corporate to coming back to executive coaching or getting into coaching. Any habit that you change? I'm sure you must have changed many habits, but any particular habit that comes to your mind, that changed your life that you would like to tell our listeners about?
I'll answer a slightly different question. I think there is these three habits which I want to cultivate, which I am
Mm-hmm.
certain will change my life. But I'm also certain will be very, very difficult because they go against my conditioned nature. And what they are is, first, I have this habit of, like, कब कोई बोल रहा है ना, I think I've actually done well in this conversation, for example, but otherwise जब कोई कुछ बोल रहा है तो I I am very perceptive and I think very quickly. So when somebody says X and they're about to say, I have already
Hmm.
extrapolated तो क्या बोलने वाले हैं, मैं
Hmm.
क्या रिफ्लेक्ट करूंगा, उसका क्या उत्तर होगा, उसके बारे में वो लोग क्या बोलेंगे, उसके बारे में क्या होगा, एंड एग्जैक्टली क्या चार चीज करना. सो आई वांट टू स्पीड रन दिस टू. Let me actually talk about the three habits. मैं ये ज्ञान बाद में बांटता हूँ if you all are curious. The three habits which I am convinced will make a change are, first, what I call acts. यानी करना है तो पुचक नहीं करना, really करना है क्या. Instead of 500 things, only three things. Like Satish, this Chrome browser thing, right? The reason it has ballooned through 5 trillion tabs is because I have been, yes, I will process them all someday. I will hold on to them. What I did now was I killed all 5 trillion. I don't even know what those tabs are, and it feels very freeing. This kind of thing everywhere, which is axe,
Right.
axe, axe. Okay, this thing one. The second thing is what you're not able to axe, allow, which is जब कोई कुछ बोल रहा है and you disagree with it almost viscerally immediately and you want to do this thing, just allow. And then respond to them with, I hear you and I understand you, because those are not the same as I agree with you. And only when people feel heard and understood are they ready for dialogue. So it's ask, allow, and the third one is ask. The thing I tend to do is, like, I'm like, सतीश तूने ज्यादा सोचा नहीं है, मेरे को I know the formula कि तेरे को क्या करना है, तू जो कर रहा है सब छोड़ दे and ये चार चीज करने अभी लग. This is hyper rational controller in me. And the habit I'm very, very, very strongly trying to cultivate is to replace everything first with infinite permissioning. Whenever somebody shares something, ask, how is it that you'd like for me to respond? Because my guess can often be right, but when it is wrong, it is very, very wrong. And even after I've guessed, completely re-permission and then only make offerings and invitations, allow them to choose if they want to open those offerings and invitations, and do this with complete non-attachment. So the formula, so to speak, and remember, the other thing I want to emphasize after this is that ये formula जो है ना, it is different for everyone else. Because at that workshop I was in, the formula I need is not all protests have to be loud. You can protest in your head, be true to yourself. You don't have to tell the dunya about it. There are many, many friends I have. If you notice, the opposite of every proverb is also a proverb. They need to think some protests have to be loud. So, bring it right back to your question, ask, allow, and ask, all with complete non attachment. This is my aspiration.
Wow.
Wow. Phenomenal. Thank you, Vivek. Vivek, the podcast title is Changepreneurs, and we try to drive positive change in the world through conversations like this. And recently, in your Musings of the Holy Cow group, I got a quote from Goldsmith, and this is how it goes. Very interesting one. Real lasting change has to come from inside. It cannot be dictated. It cannot be imposed. It has to come from the person who is making the change. So let me ask you, with this quote in context, what is the change, one, you want to see in yourself? And number two, what is the change that you want to drive in the outside world?
I'll answer the second question first because it's very easy. I
Mhm.
want to drive no change in the outside world. There's just this internal Arjuna type aim. Na? The
Mhm.
only things I want to work on are being fully present with compassion and non-attachment. And I'm convinced based on I was stuck in an awareness thing, and now I think I'm at that. It feels the real test will be a few months from now. I feel that my formula is just to remember in every moment to ask, to allow, and to ask. And the one thing I'll say is this is my current interpretation of my formula. It is not a formula. And I think the job for everybody is to figure out what is their North Star aspiration,
Mm.
what is their assessment of where they are, and to derive their formula. Because, like you said, real change can only come from within. Like
Mm.
another Vedanta teacher used to say, कि even in studying Vedanta and all, ना, सब लोग बहुत पढ़ते हैं, go to X, Y, Z. So they do a lot of this inspiration. He says inspiration is optional, perspiration is mandatory. You can realize only through perspiration with no inspiration. You will go nowhere with infinite inspiration without significant perspiration.
Okay, Vivek, any parting thoughts before we close our wonderful podcast episode today?
Few things come to mind. First, I just want to say I'm feeling very, very graced and very, very thankful because I think what this podcast, now I think one very, very target audience, I think, is me. I think I want to listen to this on loop because of the container that you guys created. It is, and the space I was in right now, it has the exact distilling of the blueprint for me. So I think
Mm.
I should listen to this periodically as I walk this path is the first thing that comes to mind. And hopefully others will benefit too. And also invitation to anybody else. If there's anything at all I can do to be helpful, just feel free to reach out and ping me. And reach out to these two and both of them know how to reach me.
Fantastic.
Wow. So, with that, we come to the end of this podcast today. Thank you so much, Vivek, for sharing your insightful thoughts, your wisdom, with our listeners today. Thanks, Satish, for co-hosting this episode with me. I would like to conclude, in my words, if possible. Yes, one thing for sure, acts, allow, and what was the last thing?
Ask.
Ask.
Ask. Yeah. Ask, allow, and ask is something maybe I'll also try to, implement in my life going forward. What I understand about Vivek is, from corporate success to conscious living, Vivek transition is not just inspiring, it's call to action, as I mentioned earlier. So, to all the listeners out there, let this be your cue to listen to your inner voice a little more closely, right? Here's to building with purpose, living with awareness, and never being afraid to rewrite your story. Thank you for tuning in to Changepreneurs podcast. Do subscribe to our channel, and until next time, stay curious and stay courageous. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you,
Thank you.
Priyanka. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.